Yo, brother, it's time for us to start talking the real, man. We've been sugarcoating too much. We've got to start calling everything out for what it is.
Hey guys, well, it's time for me to say goodbye to the V13. And first, a huge shout out to Jason at EWheels. Thanks, Jason, if you're watching this. I really appreciate you loaning me this wheel. I've had it since a little before Christmas, and it's mid-February. So, got some good use out of this wheel. Let me use the kill switch, the lift switch in the back. That's probably the second time I've ever used it. It's pretty useless unless you've got three arms to hold that and then lift the handles, but it's there. So let me go through my notes. I wanted to give you a wrap up before I send this wheel back. Final impressions of the wheel. I put about 800 miles on the wheel now. Not only me. It's been split between me, Dawn, Roger, mostly between me and Dawn, and a little bit of Roger and a few other people. It's about 1,250 kilometers for you metric people out there, and I've had no problems. It's held up really nice. I've probably put most of the scratches and scuff marks on it probably when I did my Mount Wilson 5,000 foot trail ride with it, because I dropped it half a dozen times. But yeah, it's held up really good, and I think when you have pads on the side, that really protects it a lot. And yeah, everything's been holding up really nicely, no problems. Let's see. Let me. I'm going to cut out, show you another little video segment where I'm going to look down here, and I'm going to look up into the wheel well to show you something that may be of interest. Okay, hopefully you can see those two fans. Those are sitting behind the headlight, and as best I can tell, they only turn on when you turn on the headlamp. They are not functioning to cool off the control board area. But what I don't like is the fact that these fans are exposed to the elements. And you can see the dirt on the bottom, I think, hopefully, of the fan assemblies. And maybe a little bit on some of the fan blades. I can see a little bit of evidence. And this is after about 800 miles of riding. A little bit of mud riding, not too much, mostly dust and stuff. But I think over the long haul, that's a potential area, a problem area. Obviously, if mud got up in there, that would be a problem. Now, one kind of problem that we had, and that's just figuring out how to use the wheel when we originally got it, had to do with pedal softness. There's a mode on this wheel that says pedal softness with a slider between 0 and 100. You would think at 100 it would be maximum softness. Well, that's not the case. It's maximum hardness at 100. Now, I believe they've subsequently changed that, at least in the app. I don't know if they've changed it in the firmware for this app, but we didn't know that. So we put it at 0 softness because we wanted hard pedals. Well, it turns out that as you increase pedal softness, Inmotion decreases the maximum speed of the wheel. So we had a maximum softness, which equates to maximum speed of 37 miles per hour. Now, when I first had the wheel, I rode it for a week to 2 weeks maybe, and I'm not a high-speed guy, so I rode it in the low 30s, never had a problem. Although I did have a problem in terms of wonkiness in the pedals, and that's just because it was maximum softness. So I was complaining about that in some of my videos where I wish I could have hard pedals. Well, when you put it in the truly hard pedal mode, pedals are really hard. So that's good. So anyway, once we figured all that out, then Dawn and Roger, those they could ride it at max 56 miles per hour, no problems. See, so Don did all the high-speed testing, and there'll be links in the description, and maybe I'll pop up links here as I go along for associated videos, but definitely check out Don's videos for the high-speed testing. Roger put this wheel through its paces on Fullerton Loop, where he took it, did big drops, huge hill climbs, and it did everything he asked for it. We did discover, though, during that whole process that he could overpower it, climbing up some really steep hills where the pedals would dip. So it's if you want the ultimate power wheel for climbing anything, it's still Begode. You just can't. Sorry, you just can't beat 134 volt wheels. The combination of that voltage with their high torque motors, they can do anything. But this is no slouch. But it is possible to overpower it, though. Just so you know. I took it up Overheat Hill. Didn't have any issues. Didn't overheat. Got warm. I took it up the extended Overheat Hill ride. But probably the better test was I took it up Mount Wilson. It's a 5,000-foot trail climb up a mountain, and that will overheat any wheel that's going to overheat. This did not overheat. It got warm. It was getting warm, and the temperature kept climbing, but I did notice at one point it never got above 62 degrees Celsius. It was like once it got to that point, some steady state, the heat sink internally, it's big enough that it can dissipate enough heat at that point, and it's just not going to get hotter. And given those conditions, that's not a bad temperature. I'd be totally fine with that. So it handled that tough. I didn't handle it too well, but the wheel handled Mount Wilson fine. I didn't have any issues. Pedal clearance was great. That's a real rocky trail. Looks like I just have some tiny dings on the bottom of the suspension mechanism here, but yeah, it handled fine. The one thing I discovered was bad was the trolley handle. So the trolley handle, it's a nice trolley handle for just trolleying it around when you have to move it around a little bit, or if you're going into a store, it's okay. But it's awful for something like trails where you need to get off the wheel and trolley it around some boulders, going uphill, because it's this basically a little knob, and you have no real leverage, and it's hard on your hand, and it gets very tiring quick. The best trolley handles are the King Song or the Begode trolley handles, where you have the bar, that tons of leverage for your hand. So it's a kind of a minor complaint depending on how you're going to use a V13. It's not the best trolley handle, but it's certainly not the worst. Let's see, I did range tests with this wheel, and that's there's two big downsides. I'll get to the last one, I'll get to the second one last, but the first one would be range. Probably the best scientific, quasi-scientific range test I did. In my mind, this gets about 25% less range than a comparable wheel with the size battery it's in here. Basically, the original, the OG Sherman, they both have about the same batteries, and yeah, Sherman got about 25% more battery after a 54-mile ride than this guy, and the riding conditions were the same, down to a tenth of a mile per hour moving average over 54 miles. Yeah, so that's for me, that's a downside because I'm a range guy. I like to go on long rides. Oh, avocado. Fresh avocado. I'm sitting underneath my avocado tree, and we have a few hundred up there. Yeah, so in Southern California, we go on group rides. I'm social. I like to do a lot of group rides, and this is, if I have a lot of wheels to choose from and I'm going on a group ride, I'm just going to lean against taking this wheel because of the battery capacity, even though I would love to ride the wheel. But if you're a 40-mile, kind of guy, gal, I guess I'm sure it would be fine. I really love the low battery performance on the V13. I thought it might be like the V11, which I had some bad experiences with. Severe tilt back, rapidly onset. Couldn't ride very fast as the battery got low. This guy's fantastic. I kept riding it lower and lower and lower, and at 10% battery, I was able to ride it at 25 miles per hour with it not beeping at me. Then it started dropping more rapidly, and about 7% battery is when I was starting to get the beeping and the warning messages, but I could still go 15 to 20 miles an hour at that. But then it rapidly drops to 5%, and at 5% you're riding heavy tilt back. You cannot ride this wheel down to 0% like you can with a veteran or a Begode wheel. You can ride those down to 0, which can come in handy at the end of a long ride where you misjudge things a little bit. I'd rather be able to ride to 0% battery rather than having to walk 1 or 2 miles to get back to the car. But in general, I love the low battery performance on this wheel. There's no seat, though I think maybe there's an official Inmotion seat, though I haven't seen it. But I think this is conducive to making your own seats. There's a big giant flat area up here. You could have a groove in the seat to fit the trolley handle, which would keep the seat from wanting to move left or right. And with these front and back handles, which are fantastic. When I talked to Bob, the CEO of Inmotion, I asked him about that, and he said yes, they designed these handles so that people could add stuff to their wheel. They've got threaded holes. They have lots of large slots, so it'd be very easy to attach things to the front and back of this wheel, including a platform that you could have a seat, any kind of a seat that you'd want to put on the top. So I love the handles. Oh, well, talking about the handles, great handle for grabbing. The back, not quite as much because this gets in the way from fully grabbing it. But generally, when you want to grab the handle on a wheel, you kind of want to reach for the front. This guy's beautiful. I only wish they included some rubber bumpers on the front here, but again, you could add something like I added cork here, and it's been holding up 800 miles. Cork is still working, so I can put this on, of course I don't need anything on grass, but I rested it on cement a lot, and cork does its function of keeping you from scratching up the handles. So yeah, I love that. I love the metal front and back part of this guy. Pedals are okay. There are definitely worse pedals, and I think these are the best. I can't remember what pedals are on the V12, but I suspect these are the best pedals that Inmotion has ever made. But they're still not spiked pedals, and if your shoes get wet or the pedals get wet, they're going to be sliding all over the place because they're not really spikes. They're more like screw heads sticking up a little bit. So they worked fine for me. I'm trying to think. I think maybe I did ride some snow conditions a little bit, and my feet got slippery. But yeah, so they're okay. But if you get this wheel, you're going to be wanting to look for aftermarket spiked pedals. That is for sure. This is a heavy wheel. It's 3 pounds lighter than my Master Pro, which has a 4,800 watt-hour battery. But considering its weight, this wheel handles beautifully. And I think it's because it's a thin wheel. It's 2 inches thinner than the Master Pro. And that thinness just contributes to its ride quality. And it rides like a much lighter, smaller wheel. I love riding this, and again, in my trail riding I did, it handled much better than some of my other bigger wheels. So the weight is not pleasant for getting it. For if you ever have to lift this wheel, it's awful. I basically use a ramp to get this into my truck, along with my Master Pro. All my other wheels, I don't need to use the ramp. But this one, I'll get a hernia if I try and lift this up and trying to get it into something. But I think part of what you get also with weight is stability. Riding. Add a heavier wheel. There's downsides, but part of the upsides is stability in riding. I did not use the stock pads that came with it. I never even tried to put them on. I put Grizzly flow pads on, which have been working beautifully. I love these pads. I love the quality, and they've taken a lot of abuse. When I'm trail riding and stuff, I tend to lay the wheel on its side, resting on the pads. They've been holding up beautifully. The flow aspect, where you can adjust the angles on these guys, has been great, because this has been I've been loaning out to people, right? So it makes it very easy to adjust. And the V13 has these 2 big flat panels on the side, mounted Velcro here, and it's very easy to install your own pads. I'm sure the stock pads are okay, but basically all stock pads suck, right? We all want to put our own pads on there. So, they're doing a pinch, but, that's that. Let's see. Charging. And I have a separate video on that, but you don't expect to ever charge much above 123 volts. That's on purpose. See the video for details on why. I've been able to charge with dual charge ports in the back at 12 amps. So if you have a fast charger for this 126 volt wheel, you can charge it up nice and quickly. The display is fantastic. It's decent for readability, but you can do everything. You do not need the Inmotion app, which is kind of nice. Still waiting for EUC World. That's my app of choice for Android. It doesn't support the V13. Last time I checked anyway. I'm sure it will though. But yeah, you can do everything you need with this display. I love it. I suppose the only thing I would want if I had a choice would be bigger, so you could more easily see it while riding. But yeah, wonderful. The headlight. This wheel has a gorgeous headlight. It reminds you of an automotive headlight. The quality, it's and functionally, it's beautiful. I've ridden this V13 pitch dark at high speed, high 20s mile per hour, and on trails, and I had no sense that I needed to get out one of my powerful flashlights to be able to see out in front. This lights up everything nice and bright, far distance, so you can be riding fast and see. It's great. And the daylight running light, the one that it's on all the time, looks great. It's best of class headlight. That is absolutely for sure. Tires are very personal, but I really have enjoyed riding this tire. It's great on trails. Massive tire. It's the biggest tire that I've ever seen on a wheel. Certainly in terms, I mean, it's a 22-inch. Monster Pro is bigger, but this is wider. It's a massive tire, massive wheel. So I like it. The shocks have been working great for us. Shocks they're not, I like it, I prefer a softer ride like the Sherman S. But it's like they're not too soft and they're not too firm, just about right. And the effect is you kind of forget that the wheel has a suspension. It's kind of out of your way until you hit a bump. So it's a very effective suspension. Haven't had to adjust it. Haven't been riding about 185 psi when I initially filled it up. Haven't felt the need to add any air to it. Early on, I checked, I think, a couple of times, and it wasn't losing anything. So I think the suspension is a winner. The only potential problem is, and the same with the V11, is the fact that the suspension is exposed on the bottom, which could be an issue depending on the kind of riding you do, where they could be damaged, the bottom parts. I had that same issue with the V11, and depending on what kind of damage, I don't think you're going to really damage the shock, but you could damage the hardware in the bottom such that it might be difficult to actually replace the shock if you need to take it off. And talking about that, it's got a red cap that protects the valve in the bottom, and that cap will self-unscrew and you'll lose it immediately, guaranteed, on both sides, unless you fix it better. I used plumber's tape around the threads to provide enough resistance, and I haven't lost him. So I think that's about it, except for the one final negative, and that is cost. This wheel is, I think you can, I'm not sure if you can still buy for $4,100, but I think the final retail price was supposed to be $4,500, $4,600. Very expensive. Of course, it's extremely, the quality just exudes all over the place. This is a quality wheel. It's amazing when you look. The Commander Pro supposedly is selling for $4,000, and if you can buy this wheel for $100 more and you don't need the range, you are getting so much more for your money. It's like mind-boggling. That's why, frankly, the Commander Pro is an awesome wheel, I think, but only if you can get it for closer to $3,000, not $4,000. But this wheel, it's for what you get for $4,000. For me, it's the range. That's the killer. If you could ride this like you could for a 3,600 watt-hour wheel, which I think is kind of the standard now for a heavy, big wheel, 3,600 watt-hour battery range. If you had that kind of range with this wheel, it'd be a no-brainer to buy it. No-brainer. But when you're getting 25% less than a 3,200 watt-hour Sherman, the OG Sherman, yeah, you're paying a premium. And for me, it's not worth it because I'm a range guy. I like my long rides. If this were $1,000 to $1,500 cheaper, which they probably can't do, but it would be a no-brainer to buy this wheel. Now, talking to Bob, I get the impression that there's going to be 2 new wheels at the end of this year from Inmotion, which will be interesting. 2 wheel releases. A smaller wheel and a bigger wheel. And when I say smaller, I should say probably smaller in terms of range. I don't know about physically, but so I think they're going to go after competing for the 3600 watt-hour base type wheels to get that range, and then the smaller wheels. So this is the first true performance wheel from Inmotion. I mean, I have no problems now saying that Inmotion makes a true performance wheel. I mean, this is nipping at the tail of Veteran and Begode in terms of performance. It's just right up there and extremely safe, in my opinion. So if they continue this trend, there's a lot of good things in our future from Inmotion. All right, guys, I think I'll probably have a few more videos in the can that I have to edit and get out on the V13, but otherwise I'm sending this back to EWheels, and that's it. So until next time, safe riding.